So hello everyone, I hope you had a good lunch break. I'm Patrick Jayev from AXA GETD. Today I'm going to present a project, one of the projects we are doing in the group, geospatial and computer vision, one that we did in the second half of last year and also start of this year. And I will give you also a little bit of context of the kind of topics we are interested in around just extracting building attributes. Okay. And part of this project, actually the architecture that is attention-based was developed by Tianyang Dong that did our master thesis as an EPFL student in our group. Thanks also to a collaboration with the CV Lab and with Mathieu Salzman. Okay, so first of all, AXA GETD. So we are an innovation unit of AXA. At the group level, we are based in different locations. We have an office at EPFL, plus we have one in Paris, in Barcelona from this year, in Singapore, and in San Francisco and Stanford. So computer vision and geospatial is just one of the topics we are tackling. There are many others, such as computable contract, IoT, etc., as innovation topics. Computer vision, so part of what we've been developing so far, for instance, document understanding and handwriting recognition is one of them. Maybe I can point also with this. One of them, and also fraud detection on documents. These are, of course, things that are interesting for an insurer. In addition, also image tampering detection in a way that is explainable, something we worked on also as part of a master thesis project. And some others, we've been doing quite a few on satellite image analysis, such as flood segmentation that you see here. Okay, so last year at AMLD, this was before COVID, so it sounds like ages ago. We've been presenting this project, being able actually to detect flooded areas from starting with a stock pre-trained model used to segment roads that were used before and after on pre-post imagery. What you see here in yellow, the flooded roads that are detected, and then extending the analysis using a digital elevation model that was giving us interesting results in close to populated areas. Okay, so moving to the topic of today. Why is it interesting to extract building attributes? So this is part of actually the broader property intelligence topic, if you want, knowing the customer better for the good of the insurer, but also for the good of the customer, because some customers, such as like corporate customers, they have a lot of location, and even them, they don't necessarily have a good overview over their buildings and locations. So that means being able, so for the starting point, basically the information we have is not always optimal. So sometimes we are struggling with already basic stuff like locating the customer and everything we can do to improve over that. And also the additional attribute that we could have are not always properly filled. So everything we can do leveraging actually imagery from the air is good for us, starting from the location of the customer. So this is a separate topic. We need, of course, to be able to leverage aerial imagery to know where the customer is located, the building in question. So there is quite a bit of work in our group on this, already improving the geocoding and the understanding of the building and the location by leveraging various kind of data. And then moving to building attributes. Once we know where the customer is located, there is actually quite a bit we can do from leveraging aerial images, such as checking various kind of attributes, type of roof, extent of the building, building age, plus some other attributes which are also interesting for risk assessment. In particular, the NatCat models used to assess risk for each type of peril, they have interesting attributes that are important for estimating the risk, such as for earthquake, we have the building height, which is of interest. For storm, we have the roof condition, the roof geometry. For flooding, we have the presence of a basement that could be flooded, or also the roof geometry, if it's a flood that is going to come from rain, etc. So all of these attributes are interesting to better understand actually the customer and also the risk. Okay, then moving to the kind of attributes we are interested in. So this is a rough backlog of what we've, some of what we've tried so far, categorized by kind of input imagery that we require. So you see here vertical imagery that could be shot by plane, aerial, or satellite. Some of these we've been working on, and we know that they work, like roof geometry. We can extract this from aerial imagery. It's not too complicated, and also some others such as the building outline and some other that we think that should work. Plus derive attributes. And what we are going to discuss today, a number of stories, because this is something that is a bit more complex, requires oblique imagery, and that means multiple input images per label, plus some others also that we are in the process of testing. Okay, how to tackle the problem? So if we are talking about computer vision and aerial imagery, of course, that is not something that we would start with. We would exhaust other ways which are already easier to tackle, such as if the customer is providing the data, then of course we should use it. And if we can find from external data provider the data we are interested in, then we should use it, and move to more complicated approaches only as last step, if we don't find the information otherwise. And of course, always while prototyping is required to see if an attribute is feasible. Not everything is possible. It depends on the image, on the difficulty of the task. So agenda for today, I would like to show you a few imagery of various resolution, just to give you an idea what we are able to see from the sky. And then we'll tackle this attention-based architecture for complete attributes. And then I will give you a bit of outlook, if there is still time at the end, about what we are doing. Okay, so when we are speaking about image resolution, so we have, this is what is here, 50 centimeter or 3 meter is the GSD, which means actually the distance on the ground per pixel of image. The smaller, the better. And what we can see is that per range of resolution, we have other acquisition means, satellite for very high satellite resolution to rough resolution, and then plane also you see between maybe 1.5 or 1 centimeter to 20 or something, and also drone for higher resolution, something that we didn't work with yet. Something that we can see is that actually, which is logical, you will see some example, per resolution, there are some features or things that we see on the image. If I take the example of roof condition, this is not something that we are going to see at 3 or 10 meter resolution, because we barely see the buildings. So for this, we need to go for maybe 30 centimeter resolution, satellite resolution, or aerial 7.5 or 20 centimeter. So each resolution will see different things. Okay, so looking at a few examples, so first one here on the left, ESA Sentinel-2. It is 10 meter per pixel resolution. This is very nice from ESA, open data, so fully open, freely accessible, not very high, the resolution, but for some kind of analysis, it's still interesting. You see here, this is an image of south of France after a flood. We see the traces of floods on the image. And since Sentinel-2 is multispectral, we can help us also with the multispectral bands to do analysis. But we don't see the buildings on that, so yes. Then moving to higher resolution PlanetScope 3 meter per pixel. This is not open data anymore, but is cheap and it is easy to acquire. There is no tasking, no ordering of the images that need to take place. Everything is available every day, more or less, so it's easy to handle. Moving to higher resolution, still satellite from Digital Globe, 50 centimeter per pixel. This is not cheap. Typically, this is 30 to 50 centimeter would be the highest resolution we can get from satellite. Is expensive, but very useful. We are starting to see well individual buildings and can assess things on them. Moving to higher resolution, switching from satellite to plane, here at 20 centimeter per pixel, images from this Geospatial Insurance Consortium that is very active in the US, but also coming to Europe now. So now we start really to distinguish well buildings and their features. Moving to higher resolution, still from the GIC, both images, 7.5 oblique. Oblique means the image was shot with a 45-degree angle from vertical. So now we are also starting to see the side of the building. And since oblique have 4 orientations, so we have actually the 4 sides, if you like, of the building. This is the kind of images we've worked on for the project that I will show. And then moving to higher resolution, 1.5 centimeter, very detailed. We can see even like hail damage on cars. This resolution was still experimental at the time when we did the project. Okay, so now let's move. So you see a little bit the kind of things we can see on the images, very variable, very interesting. Now moving to the architecture itself and to the project. I won't talk too much about simple attributes that we can see from the top, from vertical, because here actually simple solution with a ConvNet and a simple dataset are working quite well. Happy to give more details offline by request. Complex attributes, the ones tackled in this project, so are attributes we are not able to see from the top, so we require oblique imagery. Because of this, we have 4 input images per locations, at least, because we could have also scales, various scales. And here the baseline that we used as a comparison to this architecture was a simple ConvNet trained on a simple data set, and then some tricks to select good prediction for the multiple input images. And of course, more sophisticated architecture give better results. Okay, so I will go probably a little bit quicker on this part. So the attribute is number of stories, image from the GIC, 8 input images per location, oblique. As I mentioned, master thesis of Tianyang Dong. So you see some example here of images for building of various sizes. This bucketizing is done, of course, in a meaningful way for NatCat models. That means typically the kind of things that matter to NatCat models. So some we considered. Okay, the dataset construction, so images from the GIC. Before this, we have actually open data for several cities in the US, from which we are able to extract locations and labels such as number of floors and also some others. So actually we can build in an automated way the data set. And then some data check. The size of the data set for this project was 1,500 locations and overall 12,000 images, considering the different orientation and scales. So you see some examples. So here we have one location at the top with 2 different scales and 1 orientation here. Then here, same building, another orientation again, 2 different scales, and this is another location again, 2 scales and 2 different orientations. So actually that means the goal here is to have the model pick the good image to work with in order to do the prediction. Okay, so quickly on the baseline architecture. So what we need here is since the baseline use a standard ConvNet, convolutional network, what we need is a data set which is already curated. That means we selected the good images to use and we got rid of the rest. And for this, we can do a standard training of the ConvNet and then apply some logic in order to do the aggregation. And what we tried here was, so we have n times the ConvNets doing a prediction, and then we apply some logic to pick the best prediction using some voting mechanism or lowest entropy. Maybe quickly, the lowest entropy just means actually we would pick the best prediction, the one that is the clearest with the highest predicted value for the best class. Good, so quickly the results on this. So we can notice we have good decent result on the curated data set of 8.5% top 1 error. But then moving actually to the aggregation itself, when we have a multi-input data set, then the error deteriorates quite a bit, and we have 16% error rate, which is at this stage not good. So what could we do? So then let's try to use attention. Maybe you know this paper. Actually, what we tried is really what was described in this paper, but for computer vision. So in a nutshell, what is attention? So we have multiple input images, and one of them or some of them are good and the rest not good. So the idea here is that we have some kind of signaling in place where the network would be able to identify the best input and then use it for the further prediction. So how does it look like in the architecture? So this is the full architecture. So what we have is here we have n times a ConvNet at the left part that is generating a feature map. It's this cube. Then we have several ways how to move from the feature map to the feature vector. I'm going to go in the details of this. And then we have the attention mechanism part here, where we would, from the feature vector, we would do a projection in a lower dimension using a fully connected layer. Then the query vector is learned by the network, is compared for each input to the query, to the key vector here, using a simple mechanism. So we get coefficients per input image that we can normalize using softmax, and then actually we can compute the linear combination of the feature vector using this coefficient. We get a single feature vector on which we can apply a standard fully connected layer to do the prediction. So now let's have a look actually what possibilities we have to move from the feature map here to the feature vector. Okay, so the first possibility is what ResNet is doing is to do a simple average pooling per channel, which means we have C channels, we end up with a C dimensional vector here. Simple. Then first possibility how to use spatial attention. Now we would let the network, using a one-by-one convolution, compute a mask of the same size of the feature map, then apply the mask channel-wise on the feature map to get a weighted feature map, and finally do a channel-wise sum over the sum of the mask to get the feature vector. So this is the first mechanism. Okay, then the second mechanism, we replace the mask by a fixed Gaussian. So that actually we force the network to look at the center, rather at the center actually of the feature map. And the rest is the same. Then third possibility, that is a mix between the two, is we let the network compute the mask using the one-by-one convolution, like in the first case, but now we have actually a divergent loss term that penalizes the network if the mask is too different from a Gaussian. So that means actually that allows the network to have some flexibility, but there is still a constraint to get something that is not too different from a Gaussian, and the rest is the same. Okay, so now for the result. So first two, what we can notice is that the feature map attention module, the one using the average pooling, is not too good on the multi-input. We get more than 20% top one error. Then moving to the spatial attention module, we see that we are starting to get interesting results with less than 10% error rate. And what I need also to add on this one, this is not trained on the curated dataset anymore, which means it is an end-to-end training on the multi-input dataset. Okay, and now moving to the two next one, the fixed Gaussian mask and the adaptative one, we can notice that the fixed Gaussian mask is surprisingly good with less, close to 8%, a bit less than 8% error rate. And then moving to adaptative Gaussian mask, we get close to 7%, a little bit more, which is really starting to be interesting in terms of result. To show you a few examples, so there are cases where actually it is useful to constrain the network. Yeah, maybe a quick explanation. So what we see in the two first columns is an example for the same images between the left and the right. This is spatial attention mask here, the two first column, and the two last one is adaptative Gaussian mask. So on some example, we see that it is useful to constrain the network to look at the center with adaptative Gaussian mask. If the network can pick the mask as he wants, he could look at the wrong house or actually do some error of that kind on the image. So having a wrong classification that is fixed by the adaptative Gaussian mask. But there are also some exceptions where actually it's still useful when the network can look at a broad area of the image, like in this example here of a large building. But generally, it still improves to have this adaptative Gaussian mask, so it's still a good thing. So now moving to the overview of the results. So what I mentioned, baseline is not too good with 16% error rate, and then moving to the attention module and the end-to-end training, which is the interesting part. Then plain feature map attention module not too good, but then improved on the third, the next three ones from spatial attention to adaptative Gaussian mask. So conclusion on this architecture. So the architecture is able to cope with multiple input images, what is necessary for complex attributes. It makes end-to-end training possible, which means actually in this case we don't need curation of the dataset, which takes time because it's human intervention. Which is interesting for attributes for which we can derive a fully automated dataset from structured data. And this allows to tackle some more complex attributes where we need larger datasets, such as tests we've been doing on year build, where we see that it is challenging to be able to guess the building age from the outside. It is only weakly correlated. So for these kind of things, this means either it doesn't work or we need a large data set. And it's the same thing on construction material where we see that it is challenging. So these two, we have been running some tests, but it's still not conclusive. It seems to be challenging at the moment. Okay, and maybe last slide, this one. So what we have been doing this year, in addition to this project, we've been working on segmenting building footprints from aerial images, which is interesting because this is part of a better understanding for sites. We've been working on improved geocoding because this is always a critical topic. If we're on the wrong location, then everything we'll do, very smart things will be wrong as well. And what we are planning, some of the next step we're going to do site understanding, always a good and interesting thing to do, plus continuation of investigation for the more complicated attributes. And that will be all for my side. If there are some questions, happy to take them.